And our top focus on World DNA this morning. Flares and explosions lit up the sky over Gaza as the Israeli forces continued their bombing of the Gaza Strip.
After the collapse of a week-long ceasefire on the 1st of December, Tel Aviv began a ground offensive in southern Gaza, which started last week. Now, Israel has since pushed from the east into the heart of the city of Khan Yunis, with warplanes attacking an area to the west.
Well, the Israeli airstrikes poured down on Gaza's largest southern city. We're talking about Khan Yunis overnight. And deadly clashes and bombing shook central and northern urban areas. The Israeli police on Monday reported multiple impact sites of rocket fragments in Holon, on the edge of Tel Aviv. They said that one civilian was likely wounded. A video released by the Israeli army claimed to show weapons inside a mosque in Jabalia, northern Gaza.
The White House expressed concern over reports that Israel used US-supplied white phosphorus in attacks on Lebanon, adding that it was seeking more details on the same. Lebanon has accused Israel of repeatedly using the incendiary weapon in October. The Washington Post said analysis of shell fragments from one attack showed that the rounds were US-made.
Separately, Israel's military said it was striking the source of munitions fired from Lebanon. Well, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, a war monitor, said that the Israeli strikes late Sunday near Damascus killed 2 Hezbollah fighters and 2 Syrians working with the group. On Monday, a local official in South Lebanon was killed by an Israeli shell. Well, the IDF said that 104 soldiers had been killed and 582 wounded in its Gaza ground offensive, which began on October 27th.
Defense Minister of Israel said that Israel had no intention of staying permanently in the Gaza Strip. Yoav Gallant stated that Israel was open to discussing alternatives about who would control the territory, as long as it was not a group hostile to Tel Aviv.
He said that Israel was open to possibly reaching an agreement with Hezbollah on condition that any agreement included a safe zone along the border and proper guarantees.
Palestinians across the West Bank and East Jerusalem staged a general strike on Monday. Shops, schools and government offices all were shut in solidarity with Gazans. In Lebanon, public institutions, banks, schools and universities were also closed. And a stoppage was observed in Istanbul's Yesenyurt district. Many businesses in the area are owned by Palestinians, as well as people from Syria, Yemen and Iran.
Well, Israel said that more aid will enter Gaza as it announced 2 additional checkpoints for examining relief supplies, that is before dispatching them through the Rafah gateway. Well, no new direct crossing will be opened, but the Nitzana and Kerem Shalom crossings will be used to carry out checks before sending the trucks through the Rafah border.
The UN General Assembly is set to meet to discuss the humanitarian crisis in Gaza after the US last week vetoed a Security Council resolution for a ceasefire. Diplomatic sources say another ceasefire resolution could be proposed, though General Assembly resolutions are non-binding.
Well, on Monday, UN Security Council ambassadors travelled to Egypt to meet the Gazan victims of the war in an informal one-day trip organised by Abu Dhabi and Egypt.
The European Union's top diplomat said the situation in Gaza is catastrophic and apocalyptic. We're talking about Josep Borrell, who said the destruction is proportionally even greater than what Germany experienced in World War II.
And for more on this, we're now being joined by Irina Tsuskaman from Washington, D.C. Ms. Irina is a human rights and national security lawyer based in the U.S. She is also a geopolitical analyst. Thank you so much for joining us in WION.
Thank you for the invitation.
Right. Now, ma'am, the humanitarian cost of the ongoing war in Gaza is paramount at the moment. Hospitals in Gaza are struggling with a number of casualties and medical supplies. The UN's Palestinian Refugee Agency says that there's almost a total breakdown of civil order. The aid trucks are being looted and the situation remains apocalyptic. What happens next? Where do Gazans go now?
Well, that's a good question for Hamas, which basically has stated repeatedly that they bear no responsibility for the civilians in Gaza and that the responsibility lies on the United Nations. UN agencies are on the ground in Gaza, and they have been tracking the humanitarian aid, but the chaotic situation makes even a best case scenario of cooperation very difficult to impossible. Moreover, there have been reports that some of the UN agencies have been involved in wrongdoing. Ambulances have been used by Hamas not to transport the ill to the hospital, but to transport arms from one part of Gaza to another. So given the fact that the United Nations agencies that are supposed to be providing humanitarian relief are at some points cooperating with Hamas against Gaza civilians, it is little wonder that the situation has reached catastrophic proportions.
So you posed that question to Hamas instead. Ms. Sukuman, I also wanted to get your thoughts on this. Amid the dire situation, the UN is preparing to vote on a ceasefire resolution. And of course, this comes soon after that the US had vetoed the calls for ceasefire. Do you think it will pass through this time and will be observed as well?
Well, that really greatly depends on the text of the resolution, but the US is bound to interject if it is substantially similar to the past language which absolves Hamas of any responsibility for October 7th and the events that followed and places the blame on Israel. If that is the text of that resolution, I doubt that it will pass again. If it's something innocuous calling for a ceasefire and humanitarian exchanges without either absolving Hamas or vilifying Israel, US may not intervene. That said, even such a resolution would be useless at this time without a negotiated agreement between the two parties.
Right. There are also reports that Israel used US-supplied white phosphorus in Lebanon attack. And the White House has said that it's extremely concerned regarding these reports. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, Israel denied those reports, but the use of white phosphorus itself is not illegal. It is only illegal if it is used deliberately to target civilians, and no one, including the Washington Post, has alleged that has been in fact the case, that Israel has deliberately targeted civilians in Lebanon, nor would it make any sense for Israel to do so. They have been responding to heavy attacks from Hezbollah from that area, and the attacks from Hezbollah during the course of these past 2 months have been far more significant than any of the past attacks since 2006. So yes, the response would have been heavy-handed, but not illegal or unethical, and there's no evidence of any deliberate targeting of civilians. If civilians were in the area that Israel repeatedly told Hezbollah to clear, it is only the fault of Hezbollah for failing to do so.
All right, Ms. Irina Sukuman, thank you so much for joining in and sharing your thoughts on this. This is World DNA. Always a pleasure to have you here with us.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.